Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and we will be learning today, Mirtz Hashem. I hope to complete Kuf Mem Daled Amid Aleph, to do Kuf Mem Daled Amid Beis, and maybe we'll get a little bit into Kuf Mem Hey Amid Aleph as well. Let's see how it goes, and let's see how the voice holds up as well. So, we are continuing to learn Hilchos Tefillah. We've been learning the halachos of V'sein Tal Umat Levracha, being Shoyel Geshamim, asking the Rabbeinu Shalom, requesting rain from the Rabbeinu Shalom. We have the halacha of Mashiv Arach Amar Gashem, which is the halacha of being Mazkir Geshamim, mentioning the Rabbeinu Shalom's Gevura of Geshamim. And then we have this halacha of She'ela, of asking the Rabbeinu Shalom for Geshem in the bracha of Barech Aleinu. So we're holding in the middle of Siman Kuf Yud Zayin, and we are in the middle of Sif Beis. Now, in the beginning of Sif Beis, on Kuf Bem Gimel Amid Beis, the Mechaber told us what we learned the halacha in Sif Aleph. We learned two different zmanim of when you begin to be Shoyel Geshamim. We have one halacha that applies to Chutz La'aretz, and that is the halacha that we start on day 60 after the beginning of Tekufas Tishrei. Day 60 into the season that begins with Tishrei, which here in Chutz La'aretz, Ma'ariv, December 4th. In Eretz Yisrael, you start being Shoyel Geshamim on Zayin Mar Cheshvan. Now, why do you start being Shoyel Geshamim in Eretz Yisrael on Zayin Mar Cheshvan? Because Eretz Yisrael, the Chavetz Chaim told us, is Gevaya Mikol Ha'aratzos. Eretz Yisrael is higher. It's the highest point in the world. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not the highest point in the world above sea level. Obviously, that would be Mount Everest. But Eretz Yisrael is Gevaya Mikol Ha'aratzos, and therefore, because it's Gevaya Mikol Ha'aratzos, it's Mitara Shamayim Tishta Mayim. Eretz Yisrael needs rain. Eretz Yisrael subsists on rain. You need rain for the crops, etc., etc. And when does the rainy season start? The rainy season starts right after Sukkot. But we can't start being Shoyel Geshamim right after Sukkot, because by Sukkot you have the Oile Regalim. Everybody who came to be Oile Regel came to Eretz Yisrael, came to Yerushalayim for Sukkot, and now they have to travel back home. So we're not going to be Shoyel Geshamim at a time where it's going to make it difficult for the Oile Regel to get back home. Once it's already Zayin Mar Cheshvan, 7 days into Cheshvan, we figure most of the Oile Regel are back home already, and now we could start being Shoyel Geshamim. So we have these two times for when you start being Shoyel Geshamim. The question in Sif Beis came up, what if you have a Yachid, an individual, who for whatever reason, he needs Geshem during the off-season? So the way the Mechaber put it, if you have individuals who, for whatever reason, they need rain during the non-rainy season. They need rain during the summer. So I gave an example of a tomato farmer. A tomato farmer, the tomatoes grow during the summer, and he needs rain. So is he allowed to be Shoyel Geshem in the bracha of Barech Aleinu? Said the Mechaber, no. The bracha of Barech Aleinu, that's a bracha, that's a matbeah shetavu chachamim, that's a bracha that was niskan by Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, that the entire tzibur recites, and that's the way the tzibur asks for rain, but the tzibur is not asking for rain during the Yemai Sachama. If you, an individual, a yachid, needs rain, there's a place for that request in Shemoneh Esrei, that's within the bracha of Shemei Tefillah, not within the bracha of Barech Aleinu. In the bracha of Shemei Tefillah, we're going to learn you could ask for whatever you want. So you have a personal need for rain, insert your tefillah into the bracha of Shemei Tefillah. Now, continues the Mechaber, we were holding Kuf Bem Gimel Amid Beis, second line from the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch, last word on the line, says the Mechaber, Va'afilu ir gedola keninvei, even if a huge city, a major city, right? The pasuk says in Yaina Ninveh Hiya Ira Gedola, right? So you have even a big major city like Ninveh, Eretz Achas, or an entire country, Kula, K'may Svarad, let's say like Svarad, I guess, I'm not sure if that means Spain, Bichlala, Ashkenaz Bichlala, or the Germanic areas. So even if an entire country needs rain. So we're not talking about one individual tomato farmer. We're talking about there's an entire country that needs rain. Says the Mechaber, their halacha is ki yechidim damu. We look at them as being individuals, b'shemei atfila, and they could insert the tefillah for rain not in the bracha of berachah. They don't say v'sein talamata levracha in berachah. Instead, they have to put their personal tefillah for Geshem. They have to insert it in shemei atfila. Now, we already read this yesterday, so Mishnah Berurah is cutting tests we already did. Let's continue with the Mechaber now, Kuf Bem Daled Amud Aleph. Umihu, however, this notwithstanding, says the Mechaber, in Be'eretz Achas Kula, if you have a situation where you have one country, Hatzrichem Matar B'Maisachama, who finds themselves in a drought situation where they need rain during the Yemaisachama, and in that area, Ta'aba Yachid, an individual made a mistake. V'shal Matar B'Berachas Hashanim. And he said, V'sein Talamata Levracha in the bracha of berachah. So again, what happened over here? The Mechaber told us the halacha is if a Yachid needs rain during the Yemai Sachama, he could ask for rain in the bracha of Shemei Tefillah, not in the bracha of berachah. Even if an entire country needs rain during the Yemai Sachama, they also have to insert their tefillah in Shemei Tefillah, not in berachah. Now, says the Mechaber, however, what happens if you have a country that needs rain during the Yemai Sachama, and an individual in that country made a mistake, and he said, V'sein talamata levracha in berachah. He wasn't supposed to do that. If he wanted to be mispal for rain, he was supposed to do it in Shemei Tefillah. But he did it. He said, V'sein talamata levracha. What's his halacha? Says the Mechaber, but first the Ramah puts in two very critical words. He says, Im roitze, if this person wants, chayzer u'mispalel b'teiras nedava, he could repeat Shemona Esrei as a tfilas nedava, b'loi she'ela beberachas hashanim, without saying v'sein talamata levracha in the bracha of berachah. And says the Ramah, aval eina mechuyev lasar klal. But he's not mechuyev to do so at all. So again, let's just get clear what the case over here is. The case is, we're talking about Yemai Sachama. We're talking about after Pesach. This is the season when you're not supposed to say v'sein talamata levracha. We're talking about a country where they need rain, even though it's the Yemai Sachama. We learned the halacha that even in such a case, you're not supposed to say v'sein talamata levracha in berachah. Instead, you're supposed to insert a bakasha for rain in the bracha of Shemei Tefillah. In that country, an individual was davening Shemona Esrei, and he has in mind, we need rain. So he went ahead and he said, V'sein talamata levracha in berachah. Says the Mechaber, his halacha is he mechuyev to repeat Shemona Esrei? No. But if he wants to repeat Shemona Esrei, he could repeat Shemona Esrei as a tfilas nedava. What's a tfilas nedava? A tfilas nedava is an optional tefillah, right? It's a donation. He's giving an optional tefillah. Now, why should somebody do this? The answer is because the halacha of this individual really depends on a machlekes rishonim. We have a machlekes rishonim what the halacha is in such a country. If you have a country like this where they need rain during the summer season, it's really a machlekes rishonim whether or not they should say v'sein talamata levracha in the bracha of berachah. Now we paskin like the rishonim that say that you do not. But if somebody did, there are rishonim that say that that's okay. But if this person wants to be choishish for the rishonim who say that what he did was an error, so he could go ahead and you could repeat Shemona Esrei as a tfilas tadava. That's the background. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here on Kuf Bem Daled Amud Aleph, Mishnah Berurah is cutting yud. Chayzer u'mispalo. So the Mechaber said if he wants, he could repeat Shemona Esrei. Explains the Chavetz Chaim. First of all, you have to understand the case. Ma'irish esiyem kol tfilasoi. If we're saying that he could repeat Shemona Esrei as a tfilas tadava, we're speaking about a case where he already finished his entire Shemona Esrei. Va'az, in such a case, yachzar v'yispal b'nedava, he could go ahead and say a new Shemona Esrei as a tfilas tadava, mitchilas hatfila, going back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei. Ve'em nizkar kodim shesiyem. Let's say he remembers he's holding now by Hashiva Shofteinu Kavarishayna. And now he realizes that he erroneously said the same Talamat Levrach in Barach Aleinu. Should he go back to Barach Aleinu and not say the same Talamat Levracha? He's repeating Barach Aleinu, and he's repeating the brachas that come after Barach Aleinu before Hashiva Shofteinu. Okay, so he'll do that as a tefillas tedava. Could you do such a thing? Says the Chofetz Chaim, no. If he realizes that he erroneously said the same Talamat Levracha, and he realizes his error before he completes Shemona Esrei, you can't suggest that this person should go back to the bracha of Barach Aleinu and he should repeat the brachas that he already said, and he should do it as a tefillas tedava. You can't say such a thing. Elo yisayim etchila kol tfilasai. What he should do is finish the entire Shemona Esrei, v'achar kach yachzav yispal b'teres nedava, and then he could go say a new Shemona Esrei as a nedava. Now, on a certain level, you might think that this sounds a little bit counterintuitive, right? Because again, what are we suggesting over here? We're holding during the Yomai Sachama. This person said the bracha of Barach Aleinu, and he erroneously said the same Talamat Levracha. Okay, now he's holding the V'lirushalayim Ercha Berachah Tashuv, and he says to himself, I said the same Talamat Levracha, and that was a mistake. Yeah, but I remember learning that if you're in a country that needs rain, and I'm in a country that needs rain, that's why I said it. I remember learning that if you want to correct your mistake, you're not mechuyev to, but if you want to, you can say it tefillas tedava. So what should I do now? I want to say it tefillas tedava. Should I finish my Shemona Esrei and then say a whole new Shemona Esrei as a tefillas tedava? Why am I saying all of these extra brachas? We know we're always very makbid not to say extra brachas. We're always concerned about the risk of chas v'chalila bracha levatala. So why don't I just stop now by V'lirushalayim Ercha, go back to Barach Aleinu? I am repeating some brachas, so I'll have in mind that those brachas that I'm repeating are tefillas tedava, and then I'll finish my Esrei. In a way, that sounds like a more palatable eitzah than the eitzah of finishing the entire Shemona Esrei and then saying another Shemona Esrei as a tefillas tedava. Says the Chofetz Chaim, you can't do that. And if you want to know why you can't do that, take a look into Dirshu, Dirshu footnote number 12, where he says over here, Ubetam hadavar. The rationale for this is Kasav Le'el. We learned earlier in Siman Kov Zayin. Shehi Efshar Lehispal Tfila Achas. You cannot daven one Shemona Esrei. Shechetzya L'Shem Chayva, where part of the Shemona Esrei is a Tfilas Chayva, an obligatory Shemona Esrei. V'chetzya L'Shem Nedava. And part of the Shemona Esrei is a Tfilas Nedava. Why? Kishem Shehi Efshar Lahavi Carbon. Let's remember that our Shemona Esrei is unishalma parim sefasenu. Our Shemona Esrei is in lieu of karbanos. Unfortunately, we don't have the Beis Hamikdash. We can't bring karbanos. Our Shemona Esrei is in lieu of karbanos. There's no such thing as bringing a carbon that's partially a carbon chayva and partially a carbon nedava. So too, there's no such thing as a Shemona Esrei that's partially a tefillas chayva and partially a tefillas nedava. Oiskan Yadala says the Chofetz Chaim. The Ramah said that Aval Einoi Mechuyev Lachzar Klal. This person is not mechuyev to repeat Shemona Esrei at all. Says the Chofetz Chaim, Ayin B'Bir Halacha. He directs you to the Bir Halacha. Dim Loi Haya Atziras Kishamim. That if this was not a time of a drought, V'Shal Matar B'Medinoi Seinu Mi Pesach V'Ad Atzeres, and in our regions, somebody said V'Sein Talamat Levracha between Pesach and Shavuos. Tzarich Medina Lachzar ul Hispalel B'Teras Nedava. Really, in our Medinos, it's not so inappropriate to say V'Sein Talamat Levracha between Pesach and Shavuos, because that by us is still really a rainy season. However, that's not the time for V'Sein Talamat Levracha. We don't say V'Sein Talamat Levracha after Pesach. So if you did say V'Sein Talamat Levracha between Pesach and Shavuos, you have to say Shemona Esrei over again, but it should only be done as a tefillas nedava. Okay, now we turn to Sif Gimel, bottom line here in the Shulchan Aruch Kuf Mem Daled Amud Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Im Shal Matar B'Yomai Sachama, if somebody said V'Sein Talamat Levracha erroneously during the summer months, during the Yomai Sachama, Machzir Naisai, we send him back. He needs to go back and repeat Shemona Esrei. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting Yud Beis. Motar. This person said motar. He was shoyel geshem. He was shoyel motar. Says the Chavetz Chaim, bein shashal tal oiloi. Doesn't matter if he said v'sein tal. The critical piece over here is he said v'sein motar. So even if the person didn't say v'sein tal motar levracha, but he said v'sein motar levracha, he's got to go back and repeat his Shemona Esrei because he was shoyel geshem inappropriately. He did this during the spring and summer months. Says the Chavetz Chaim, where we just said that if you're shoyel geshem inappropriately between Pesach and Atzeres, between Pesach and Shavuos, yes, you have to repeat, but only as a tfilas nedava. V'ayin b'biur halacha, he says, take a look at the biur halacha. The imshal matar achar achag. What if you say v'sein tal matar levracha after Sukkos? Af koydem shishim yom t'tkufa, but you did it before the 60th day of Tkufas Tishrei. So on our calendar, instead of waiting for Ma'ariv of December 4th, somebody said v'sein tal matar levracha in middle of November. So it was after Sukkot, but before day 60 of the Tkufa. But he lives in a region where in reality they need rain right away in the beginning of the winter. The place where he lives is not a place where they don't need rain until day 60 of the Tkufa. Right? We make the halacha very black and white. In Eretz Yisrael, you start being Shol Geshem on the 7th of Mar Cheshvan. In Medina Sayyam, you start being Shol Geshem day 60 of the Tkufa. But there are places in Medina Sayyam where you need rain before day 60 of Tkufas Tishrei. So what if a person lives in such a region and he said v'sein tal matar levracha between Sukkos and day 60 of Tkufas Tishrei? Says the Chavetz Chaim, tzarich lachzor u'lispal rak b'teres nedava. He should daven over again, but only as a tfilas nedava. Oiskat Yodalid, the Mechaber said, Machzir Naisai, this person who erroneously said, V'sein tal matar levracha, Machzir Naisai, we make him repeat his tefillah. What does it mean that he has to repeat Shemona Esrei? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, Hainu im akar raglov, if he already finished Shemona Esrei, and he already took 3 steps back, he already moved his feet, akar raglov, chayzel rosh hatefillah. He's got to go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei. V'imloi akar raglov, if he did not yet step out of Shemona Esrei, chayzel l'tchilas berachas hashanim, he could go back to the beginning of Baruch Aleinu. Va'afilu im, turning the page here, va'afilu im nizkar koydem shesiem habracha, even if somebody realizes that he erroneously inserted v'sein tal matar levracha, and he realizes it before he says Baruch Atah Hashem Mevarach Hashanim, Yachzor Gam Kein L'Tchilas Berachas Hashanim, he should go back to the beginning of Baruch Aleinu, V'ayin Biur Halacha. Okay, now we turn the page to Kuf Mem Dalet Amid Beis. No? Yes. Sif Dalet, says the Mechaber, Im Lo Yishal Matar B'Mois HaGeshamim, if somebody failed to say v'sein tal matar levracha during the rainy season, Machzir Naisai, he has to go back and repeat his Shemona Esrei, Af al pi sheshal tal. Even if he did say v'sein tal, but he didn't say v'sein motar. Now, we had this a similar halacha earlier when it came to the halacha of being mazkir geshamim. When it came to the halacha of saying mashav ruach amarid agoshem, we said if somebody neglected to say mashav ruach amarid agoshem, but he did say morid hatol, we said he doesn't have to repeat. Why? Because by saying morid hatol, he was mekayim the takanas chazal in minimal fashion. Since he was mazkir gevurois tal, he mentioned the Rebbeinu Shalom gevura of bringing dew, and tal is also mechaya the world, so it's also like Tchias HaMesim. So by inserting morid hatol into the bracha of mechaya HaMesim, he's mekayim the takanas chazal in minimal fashion, and he doesn't have to repeat Shemona Esrei. This is not true by being shoyel geshem. In the bracha of Baruch Aleinu, you need to be shoyel geshem. If you were shoyel tal, that's not enough. You got to repeat. So again, the Mechaber says, Im lo yishal matar b'mois hageshamim, machzir noisai af al pi sheshal tal, aval im shal matar v'lo tal. But if he said v'sein matar and he left out tal, ein machzir noisai. For that, he does not have to go back. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton tesvav im loy shal ein mamagad of Ramu b'shari tshuva shekasvu dim nizkar kodim shehischel tekah b'shofar. Let's say somebody finished the bracha of Baruch Aleinu. He said berachah to Hashem mevarach hashanim. Now he realizes that he didn't say v'sein talamot levracha. He only said v'sein bracha. Could he still fix his mistake without repeating the bracha of Baruch Aleinu? Says the Chavetz Chaim in the name of the Magid of Ram and the Shari Tshuva, yes. He should oimroi sham. He could say Baruch Atah Hashem Mevarach Hashanim, v'sein talamot levracha al pnei ha'adama, and then continue on to tekah b'shofar. As long as he did not yet say tekah. If he already said tekah, it's too late. Now he's got to go back to the beginning of Baruch Aleinu. You could go back to Siman Kuf Yudal, where there's a lengthy Bir Halacha that discusses this. Uberarnu, and the Chavetz Chaim says that over there we explained, the Yoser Tov Sheyomar B'Shemei Tefillah, it would be better not to insert V'sein Talamot Levracha Al Pnei Ha'adama between Mevarach Hashanim and Tekah B'Shofar. It would be better to insert it into the bracha of Shemei Tefillah, the Bazeh Yatzel L'Kuli Alma, because by doing that, you'll fulfill all Shitas. Ata now, says the Chavetz Chaim, Atzasi B'Sefer Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, he says, I saw in the Sefer Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Shapasa Gamkein Hachi, who also paskins that it's better to insert V'sein Talamot Levracha in the bracha of Shemei Tefillah. That would be better than inserting it between Mevarach Hashanim and Tekah B'Shofar. V'im nizkar kodim shesiyam berachas Hashanim, if you remember that you left out the same talamot levracha before the end of the bracha of Baruch Aleinu. So you said Baruch Aleinu Hashem Elokeinu Hashana Azois V'Eskamines V'Asalo Teva, the same bracha al Pnei Ha'adama V'Sabeinu Mituva V'Reichshu Naseinu, and now you realize, whoops, I forgot the same talamot levracha. Then Yomer B'Makom Shenizkar. Then you could say right then and there the same talamot levracha al Pnei Ha'adama. However, im nizkar achar kashanim hatoivos, if in Nusach Ashkenaz you already said kashanim hatoivos, or in Nusach Sfarad you said kashanim hatoivos levracha, which are the last words right before Baruch, Yachzer v'yomer, you should now insert the same talamot levracha, and then Yachzer v'yomer, and then repeat uvarei shnaseinu kashanim hatoivos, or kashanim hatoivos levracha. Why? Kedei sheyeh mein chasima samach lechasima. So you fulfill the requirement of saying a nusach which is me'ein hachasima. You have to say words that are similar to the closure of the bracha right before the chasima. So right before Baruch Atah Hashem Mevarach Hashanim, you have to say something like kashanim hatoivos levracha. So you should repeat those words. The best thing would be sheyaschil v'sein talamatar. Go back to the words v'sein talamatar levracha v'yigmar keseder, and repeat the rest of the bracha till the end. Now we go in the Shulchan Aruch here, Kuf Bem Daled Amud Beis Sif Hey. Says the Mechaber, Im loy sha'al motar, if you did not say v'sein talamatar levracha v'nizkar kodim shemei tefillah, and you don't remember your omission in the bracha of Baruch Aleinu, but you remember before you say Baruch Atah Hashem Shemei Tefillah, ein machzir noisai, you don't got to go back to Baruch Aleinu. V'shayil b'Shemei Tefillah, insert v'sein talamot levracha in the bracha of Shemei Tefillah. V'em hayoloi tainus, let's say this happens on a fast day, happens on Asar B'Tevis, v'tzarech loimer anenu, and you have to say anenu in Shemei Tefillah. So now you have two insertions that you have to make in the bracha of Shemei Tefillah. You have to insert your omission of v'sein talamot levracha, and you also have to say anenu. Which one comes first? Says the Ramah, yomer ha'she'ela koydem anenu, you should say v'sein talamot levracha before you say anenu, and the reason for that is because clearly she'elas kishamim, v'sein talamot levracha, is more chamor. It has a more stringent halacha than the halacha of anenu. Because if you miss anenu on a fast day, you don't repeat Shemon Esrei. But if you leave out v'sein talamot levracha, you do repeat Shemon Esrei. So if you have a choice, which one should you insert first? You go with the more chamordika one first, which is v'sein talamot levracha. Continues the Mechaber, third line down, end of the line. Let's say you don't remember your omission until the middle of Ritzei. So, or in the middle of a Chalachayim. You realize you didn't say V'sei Talamot Levracha. Says the Mechaber, Im loy akar raglov, if you did not yet step out of Shemoneh Esrei, chayzel leberachas hashanim, go back to Baruch Aleinu. V'im akar raglov, if you already stepped out of Shemoneh Esrei, chayzel lereish tefillah, you have to go back to the beginning of Shemoneh Esrei. V'im hishlim tefillasai, now let's say you already finished Baruch Atah Hashem ha'mavarechas Am Yisrael b'shalom, but you did not yet take 3 steps back. Ve'enoi ragil loimer tachanunim achar tefillasai, and you're not a person who usually says takanunim like Elokai Nitzar after Shemoneh Esrei, but we all say Elokai Nitzar. Afa pisha adayin lo yakar raglov. Then, even if you did not yet step out of Shemoneh Esrei, ka'akurim dami, it is as if you did. Why? Because if you already said Mavarchas Am Yisrael b'shalom, and that's the end of your Shemoneh Esrei, so you're already Mesiach Das. Your Shemoneh Esrei is over. V'im nizkar achar shechasam shemei tefillah kadim shehischel ritzei. Let's say you remember your omission right after saying Baruch Atah Hashem Shemeh Tefillah, before you say Ritzei, Nirish Ha'omer V'sein Tal U'Motar V'achar Kach Omer Ritzei. The Mechaber says you could insert V'sein Tal U'Motar Levracha right there between Shemeh Tefillah and Ritzei. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Tezayin. He said, if you omitted the same Talamot Levracha and you remembered before the bracha of Shemeh Tefillah, you don't go back. Instead, you insert it within the bracha of Shemeh Tefillah. Says the Chavetz Chaim, V'shayel b'Shemeh Tefillah, Ritzayin Eloymar, what the Mechaber wants to say is, Beberachah Shma Keleinu Kaidem Ke'ata Shemeh. You insert the same Talamot Levracha within the nusach of the bracha of Shemeh Tefillah, right before the words Ke'ata Shemeh. Shemesukenes lisha b'kala b'kashos, because that bracha was mesukin by Chazal as a catch-all. That's a bracha in Shemoneh Esrei where you could insert whatever bakashos, whatever requests you have from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Ukidol kaman b'simin kuf yotes. Aval askaras mashiv ruach, but when it comes to be maskir geshamim, saying mashiv ruach amar dagashem, kaimalon le'el b'simin kuf yodalid. We learned earlier in Siman Kuf Yodalid, the Imshachach, if you leave out Mashiv Berurah Amar Dagashem, Chayzer, you have to go back and you cannot insert it in Shemeh Tefillah. Why? How come you could insert the same Talamot Levracha in Shemeh Tefillah and you cannot insert Mashiv Berurah Amar Dagashem? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, Misham Dahazkara Shvachu. Mentioning Mashiv Berurah Amar Dagashem, that's praising the Rebbeinu Shalom. That the bracha of Shemeh Tefillah does not work for. The bracha of Shemeh Tefillah is not a bracha where you insert praises to the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's a bracha where you can insert bakashos, requests. So if it's saying Talamot Levracha, you can insert, but Mashiv Berurah Amar Dagashem you cannot. If your omission of a Saint Talamot Levracha happened on a fast day, and so now you have 2 insertions you have to make in Shemeh Tefillah, Anenu and also V'sein Talamot Levracha. So then, which one comes first? V'sein Talamot Levracha. Explains the Chavetz Chaim, like I spoke out. The reason for this is because the request of V'sein Talamot Levracha has a more stringent din than Anenu. Because if you leave out the same Talamot Levracha, you got to go back. Masha ain't kain ba'anenu. Ois katan yudches. The Mechaber told us that somebody who's not in the habit of saying tachanunim, somebody who does not recite additional prayers, additional tefillas at the end of Shemoneh Esrei, so when he finishes Shemoneh Esrei, even if he doesn't step out of Shemoneh Esrei, it's considered that his Shemoneh Esrei is over. It's ka'akurim dami. It's as if he already stepped out of Shemoneh Esrei. Says the Chavetz Chaim, the same halacha would apply if he is in the habit of saying tachanunim. V'siyem tachanunav, and he already finished the tachanunim. V'amar akareim apasik yularatzin, and he said yularatzin im rifi v'egilibel v'anach Hashem tziri v'gayali, but he did not yet say oisa shalom. Sheba Amiras Pasuk Zeh, because by finishing the Tachanunim and saying Yul Ratzain, also Hesach Hadas Milomer Oy Tachanunim. That's already a Hesach Hadas. I'm finished by Tachanunim. So now it's too late to insert the Say Talamat Levracha. V'nishlamat Tvilasa, his davening is over. Afal Bishali Hischal Adayin Oisa Shalom, even if he didn't say Oisa Shalom yet. So if you already said Yul Ratzin and you're up to Oisa Shalom and Raimav, your Shemay Esrei is finished. You forgot to say Talamat Levracha, you got to go back to the beginning, even if you did not yet physically step out of Shemay Esrei. He's cutting your test. What if you remember Achar Shechasam Shemei Tefillah? You remembered that you didn't say V'sei Talamat Levracha after you said Baruch Atah Hashem Shemei Tefillah, but before you said Ritzei. So the Mechaber said you can insert it right there. V'im Niskar Achar She'ama Baruch Atah Hashem. What if you said Baruch Atah Hashem? You're about to say Shemei Tefillah, and now you remembered, I didn't say V'sei Talamat Levracha. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Yesayim Lamdeini Chukecha. End off Lamdeini Chukecha. Baruch Atah Hashem Lamdeini Chukecha. As a pasuk can tell him. V'yoymar v'sei talamatar. Then say v'sei talamatar levracha. V'achakach ki'ata shemeya. So you should have me'ena chasima samach lechasima, and then finish the bracha. Baruch Atah Hashem shemeya tefillah. Okay, we're not going to be able to get much further, but let's do Siman Kuf Yud Ches here, a tiny little Siman, and let's complete Kuf Mem Dalet Amud Beis. Says the Mechaber Kuf Yud Ches Chasimas Berachas Hashiva, the proper closure for the bracha of Hashiva Shofteinu K'varishayna V'Yotzenu K'vatchila. I just want to say over Kala Omer Davar B'Shem Omrei Mevi Geula La'olam. I heard a beautiful vart from Meir Zlotowitz, Olav Shalom, of Art Scroll fame. He pointed out that in Shemona Esrei, in the bracha of Hashiva Shofteinu K'varishayna, what is the bracha of Hashiva Shofteinu K'varishayna? Hashiva Shofteinu K'varishayna. We asked the Rabbeinu Shalom, bring back our judges K'varishayna the way they were in earlier days. Anybody who's ever gone through a tzara involving Bezdin or Dayanim, they understand what we're being mispal for over here. We're asking, give us the Dayanim that we used to have. Give us a Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashiva Shofteinu K'varishayna. V'yoyatzenu k'vatchila, and our advisors like they were at our beginning. V'haser mimenu yogain va'anacha, and remove from us yogain, sorrow, va'anacha, and groaning. Said Meir Zlotowitz, the only bracha in Shemona Esrei where we asked the Rabbeinu Shalom, v'haser mimenu yogain va'anacha, is in the bracha of Hashiva Shofteinu K'varishayna. It's not in the bracha of Re'eva Anyenu V'Riva Rivenu. It's not in the bracha of Rifaenu. It's not in the bracha of Baruch Aleinu when we mispal for Parnasa. Where do we ask the Rabbeinu Shalom v'Hasem Imenu Yagain V'Anacha? In the bracha where we ask the Rabbeinu Shalom to give us back a Sanhedrin. Anybody who's ever gone through tsaros with Gittin or with business matters, with Dinei Torah and court cases and everything else, that's where we ask the Rabbeinu Shalom v'Hasem Imenu Yagain V'Anacha. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, Kuf Yud Ches Sif Aleph. Hashiva Shofteinu, the bracha of Hashiva Shofteinu, Chosem Ba, the proper chasima for that bracha is Melech Ohev Tzedakah Umishpat. We say Baruch Atah Hashem, gebenched is the Rabbeinu Shalom, Melech the king, Ohev Tzedakah Umishpat, who loves tzedakah, righteousness, umishpat, and judgment. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Aleph, Melech Ohev, V'im Amar B'chol Hashana HaMelech HaMishpat. We're about to say that during Aseres Yemei Tshuva, we don't say Melech Ohev Tzedakah Umishpat, we just say HaMelech HaMishpat. So what if you said HaMelech HaMishpat during the rest of the year? Oy Hakel HaMishpat, or you said Hakel HaMishpat, like we say Hakel HaKadosh. Yasa, you're Yaitza B'di'evet. Says the Ramah, no, I'm sorry, continues the Mechaber, Rosh Hashanah Vad Yom Kippurim, during Aseres Yemei Tshuva, during the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Chaysem, we close off the bracha of Hashiva Shofteinu with the words HaMelech HaMishpat. Says the Chavetz Chaim is Katan Beis, HaMelech HaMishpat b'shnei heyin. We have two heys here, HaMelech HaMishpat, not HaMelech Mishpat. v'yizaher bazeh. And the Chavetz Chaim says we should take great care to pronounce this properly. Because there are those that say that if you say it wrong, if you say melech ha-mishpat, not ha-melech ha-mishpat, you're not yoytza. However, the Chavetz Chaim says if you say melech ha-mishpat, you don't go back. Says the Ramah, Haggah, Mihu, im amar melech ohev tzedakah u'mishpat, if during Aseres Yimei Tshuva you forget to say ha-melech ha-mishpat, and instead you say melech ohev tzedakah u'mishpat, ein tzarich lachzir, you don't have to go back. V'loi amru sheyachzar ela b'makom shekol hashana omrim hakel ohev tzedakah u'mishpat. The only time you would have to go back if you said it the wrong way during Aseres Yimei Tshuva is in a place where they have the minig that all year round they don't say melech ohev tzedakah u'mishpat, so they don't mention malchus at all. And instead, in that area, they have a minig to say hakel ohev tzedakah u'mishpat. So then you didn't mention malchus. If you didn't mention malchus during Aseres Yimei Tshuva, so you have to go back and you have to say hamelech hamishpat. But if you say melech ohev tzedakah u'mishpat during Aseres Yimei Tshuva, you mention malchus. So then you don't have to go back. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Cotton Gimel, Ein Tzarich Lachzar, Ayin Ba'achrayim. He says, take a look at the Achrayim Damaski, who conclude, Dem Nizkar Toich Kedei Dibor Me'es Amroi U'Mishpat. If Toich Kedei Dibor of saying Melech Ohev Tzedakah U'Mishpat, you realize your mistake, and Omer HaMelech HaMishpat Gamkein. So you go like this, Baruch Hashem HaMelech Ohev Tzedakah U'Mishpat. HaMelech HaMishpat. Ve'em Lachar Kedei Dibor, so then that's okay, you could do that. But if it's after Toich Kedei Dibur, then it's too late to make a correction. But like we said, you don't have to go back. Okay, we're going to stop over here. But Baruch Hashem, we completed Kuf Bem Dalet Amud Aleph and Kuf Bem Dalet Amud Beis. I'm going to be satisfied with that for the time being. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for limid HaTorah. Discuss of limid HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu should send Yeshua Refuas Parnas and Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zoichet to see the B'Yeskel Tzedek. B'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.